I think this is all that's coming tonight since
Somebody
we
just read-
started, so.
Yeah, somebody did a little
Hope
bit.
everybody
Once in our road, we'll
has had a good day, and I hope everybody's got a Bible with them or available to them.
Yeah.
We were asked to go back and recap last week, and so we'll do a quick recap of last week. And we had started with verse 12 of chapter 8 last week is where we had started. And this was to kind of catch us up to where we were there. Originally this was about the time Haman was going to go out and in one day kill all the Jews in Persia.
We're still yesterday.
Yes.
Still yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you was, I want to make sure.
Last week messed us up, didn't it?
Yeah.
But anyway, but Mordecai had hatched up this scheme. We remember he'd hatched up this scheme to get rid of all the Jews, and so Esther turned the page on him and invited him and Haman, the king, and Haman to a feast she was putting on, just her and the king and Haman. And Haman thought he'd really arrived. And he went back home and his wife said, now wait a minute. There's something ain't good about this. And it doesn't never say this in the Bible, but she basically tells Haman, if this is of the Lord, you'll lose. And so the king was all giddy and everything after the banquet. I'm sure he drank quite a bit of wine because it talks about the banquet of wine. And so he asked Esther, what do you want? Up to half the kingdom, it's yours. She said, well, what I'd really like is you and Haman and to come again to another banquet tomorrow night. And then the story comes up about the evilness of Haman. Because in the meantime, Haman had built the gallows, if we remember, 75 feet tall. So it could be seen from all over the palace city of Shushan. And this infuriated the king when he found out how he'd been double-crossed and what Haman actually had planned. He said, hang him. And so they take him away and they hang him on the gallows 75 feet tall that was made to hang Mordecai on. And anyway, the king asked Esther whatever she would like. And she had asked if the decree that the king give to kill all the Jews could be reversed. And he said, under Persian law, that cannot be done. Once a decree is decreed under Persian law, it can't be reversed. So she said, well, then can the Jews defend themselves? Yes, they can. And so he said, get the order out. And so we read earlier about how they got this order put together, and normally they would just send these orders out by horsemen. And so the order that Mordecai sends out goes out by every means possible. It says they used camels, they used mules, they used horses, they used everything to get this order out as quick as they could. So anyway, last week when we picked it up, they had got up to the day when the order was supposed to be carried out to kill all of the Jews in Persia in one day. Now then, originally, Haman had promised the king so many talents of silver if he would let him kill all the Jews. And when Ahasuerus originally said that, he said, yeah, and he said, I'll bring all the money into the treasury. And Ahasuerus said, keep it. I don't want it, don't need it. And then, I don't know what happened, but in the meantime there, Haman had said to the people that helped him kill all the Jews, all the Jews you can kill, you can keep whatever they have. You can keep it for a spoil. And so anyway, we were up to that. And so take verse 12 of chapter 8.
Up on one day in all the fragments of the king Ahasuerus, namely upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month of Adar.
You remember originally when Haman was plotting this scheme, he went to the, I don't know, I'd call them soothsayers of the day. And he says, tell me which is the best day that I could be the most successful on to kill all the Jews in one day. What would be the perfect day? Now, I haven't found in history yet, I don't know if someone knows, share it with us, how they went about casting lots. I don't know whether they drew straws back then. I don't know whether they had dice back in those days and they rolled them. I don't know whether they had cards they drew from. I don't know what they had.
Billy said even sticks.
What's that?
Billy said even sticks.
Sticks. They had
Yeah,
sticks of some kind. But anyway, they did something and they kept doing it till it narrowed it down till the 13th day of the 12th month of their calendar, which I think is about September of our calendar. September or October, 1, 2. But anyway, it narrowed it down to that day. But the 13th day of the month was the day to do it on.
Wouldn't be the 13th of December.
Nope, wasn't the 13th of December. Their calendar was different than ours.
I read when that was, but I don't see it tonight. Maybe I see it when I study it.
I read it in my studies too, but I don't have it committed to memory.
I forgot now.
But anyway, I believe the order went out on the 25th of June. The original order went out to kill all the Jews on the 25th of June.
It says it would have been March the 7th in our modern calendar.
Was when this was all settled, wasn't it? That's when they cast the...
It says Haman, this is what my commentary says, Haman had decreed that on the 13th day of the 12th month, which would be March the 7th in our modern calendar. And I know, Teresa, you have the same Bible I have. It's at 9/15/16. 9/5 through 16. Do you see it down there?
Oh, I do.
Did you say June?
March 7th.
March 7th.
Okay. But anyway, the orders went out. Now then, we talked about it. We'll touch on it there again for those that might not have heard it. All throughout the kingdom, the king would have had armament stationed so that if he called his army out quickly and needed them, they could just go to a location in their province, gather up their armament, and be gone. Now see, Haman's men originally, since Haman was second in command to the king, would have had access to all of those armories, and the Jews would have been totally defenseless. They would have been totally defenseless. Verse 13. Teresa, you take that.
The copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies.
See, the order's been reversed.
And now they can stand up for themselves.
See, originally, the Jews, I was going to say originally, didn't know this was coming when it was originally established, because all the information just went out to the people Haman wanted it to go out to. So, verse 14.
So it'd be a surprise.
Yes, yes.
So the codes that rode upon mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace.
Yeah, see, everything since Ahasuerus was ruling at this particular point in time from Shushan. If I remember right, he had 3 palaces he could rule from. It just so happened he's at Shushan at this time. He's at that one. So anyway, the order goes out, or the decree goes out from Shushan. And we read earlier, a week or so ago, that they had used every means possible. Mordecai had to get the word out, and we see here that the decree was going out. And after the decree goes out, Gabrielle, verse 15.
So Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in a royal apparel of blue and white, with a great crown of gold and a garment of fine lines and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad.
You can take away from this study that there was a large number of Jews in the palace city. And so, now then, if we read back there, that on the way out the door, when they were taking Haman out to kill him, somebody from the king took the ring off of his finger that made him second in command, and it is now placed on Mordecai's hand. Plus, and I don't know what you take of this. Now, Haman had been given a crown to wear because he's number 2 in the kingdom. But I don't know what you take away from this, but you read this, and it says of Mordecai, though, with a great crown of gold. Now, I don't know whether there was several crowns in the king's pantry.
It was probably fancier because Haman thought he was going to get it, remember?
Yeah,
So he was saying what all.
yeah.
So it probably
Maybe,
was
I don't know whether the
set up.
king had a pantry that had several crowns in it. I don't know. But you don't read here anywhere where they took the crown off Haman and gave it to Mordecai. But it says Mordecai was given a great crown of gold. I mean, there would be no doubt who he was as he left the palace and walked through the street.
That might be the same one they had when he was been there on the horse. You know, when,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because he thought, Haman thought he was going to get all
so
that.
he thought he was going to get it, so he got him everything great, you know. I want him to have the best, you know.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So he didn't realize he's himself.
Yeah.
Kind of backfired on him.
But when Mordecai leaves the palace out into the streets, there's a great cheer goes up. There's just a great roar from the crowd because the crowd is all happy.
Well, the Jewish people had grown in such a number that there's a lot of Jewish people at Shushan The whole, I mean, in the whole empire, there was a lot of Jewish people.
Yeah, there was, but I said there was obviously a large population of Jews.
And I'm sure some of the people that wasn't Jewish didn't want to do what Haman wanted them to.
Well, just like anything else, I'm sure they'd lived side by side for so long that they'd made friends.
You know, if somebody's come to us and say, you know, this nationality, we won't like them, we need to kill them all, there'd be a lot of us having uproar.
Yes,
Because
we've made friends with a lot
we
of
don't
them.
want to kill them people.
No.
No. Anyway, the next verse.
The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor.
There's a key word there that I picked up in studying that. Something the Jews had not ever had before in Persia.
The honor.
Honor. Honor. Respect. Before they were just there. And that's a very key word in that verse, was the fact that now they had honor, which goes along with authority, respect, and a whole lot of words that we could choose to use. The 17th verse back here, guys, if you guys are ready. You want to read?
Which verse?
17.
Verse 17 of chapter 8.
In every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews enjoy in gladness a feast and a good day, and many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them.
Yeah. Now, this word spread quickly, and it says in every province that the word got to. Now there's 127 provinces. Some of them are way out there. So in every province that the word gets to, the people are, it says, had great joy and gladness, and a feast, a celebration breaks out. And it says, and a lot of the people, just like we said there's a lot of the people there in that palace city, they didn't want to kill those Jews. They'd made friends with them. Kids played together. Sit down and visited together, ate together from time to time. They didn't want to kill all these Jews. It says, but it's interesting to me here, they don't never say this in this verse, but I touched on this last week. This is the fear of the Lord came on these people. And they call it, they say the fear of the Jews, but that was the fear of the Lord came on these people. Yeah. And so all of a sudden they said, we want to join you to defend yourselves. We will stand with you to defend yourselves. Tomorrow or whenever this day is, how far are we off? Verse 1 of chapter 9. Okay.
Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them.
They had fear, didn't they?
Strong word there. Rule.
Yeah, I'd say afraid.
What's that?
I'd say they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're scared.
But all of a sudden, remember, before the Jews were to be defenseless, and only Haman, Persian supporter, would have access to the weapons. Now, all of a sudden, the Jews have access to the weapons. Verse 2.
The Jews gathered themselves together in the cities through all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hands on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people.
You get that? This is the fear of the Lord.
Yeah, they felt it. They felt it.
Fell upon all these people.
And I'm sure the Jewish maybe wasn't the largest amount of people, but when you have all the weapons and the king on your side and God on your side, got to remember that, it changes everything.
Changes everything. I mean, it changes everything. Because we also find out there's a very important thing in verse 3. Whose turn is it, Bill?
Okay. And all of the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and the officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them.
Now see, here's the people that would have been in charge of all the armament in these 127 provinces. This is the people that would have been in charge of that. And what does it say? They helped the Jews. They helped them. Made sure they had access to all the weapons. Helped organize them into companies, I'm sure. And they were ready on this day when these other people came to take them. Conager, verse 4.
Right. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater.
Yes. Now I don't understand, but somehow or other his fame, and I'm taking this, it took a while for what had transpired in Shushan to make it out and out and out.
Right, that's why it was getting greater and greater. They kept hearing more and more things.
And then when stories get told, don't sometimes the story grow?
Ain't that a fishing story?
I think you could very well say this is a fish that started out in Shushan about this long, and he's like this when he gets out there to the 127th province. When he gets out there.
I think that's the one that got away, though. You know, I got him up the boat, but he was wrong. He's bigger than the boat.
Anyway, it says he waxed greater and greater, which means his fame spread throughout the whole.
And his power would have got bigger.
Yes. Well,
His
word of his power.
Yeah, his authority.
Yeah, word of his
Because it
authority.
says in the fear of Mordecai fell upon them now.
Yeah, yes. Because you remember people were scared to death of Haman.
Yep.
Now they were afraid of Haman. So let's back over here. Brad, verse 5.
The Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of sword, slaughtered and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them.
Had their way. Had their way. I mean, they just did what they wanted to do. And let's see.
And in Shushan, the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men.
And this is going to get interesting because we're going to read on down here that some of Haman's supporters obviously hid out and escaped this day. we'll find out later what happens to them. But because now something that's important here is the king's order covered one day. That's all it covered. For both sides.
Okay, don't say too much.
Huh?
Don't say too much.
Yeah. But yeah, it just covered one day. That's the king's order. That's all it covered. It was one day. But anyway, in that particular day, the Jews inside the palace city killed 500 men. Killed 500 men. Now then, in verses 7, 8, and 9, we get the words, the names of Haman's 10 sons.
See, I'm glad I don't have to read that.
Oh,
Don't call me. We didn't read it last week. We
No.
skipped it.
I'm just gonna read the first initial, P, D, A, P, A, A, B.
But
And the
anyway,
10 sons.
this is the name of Haman's 10 sons. Right here.
That's it.
Verse, let's see, whose turn is it? Dale 10.
Or to skip all them?
Yeah, I already said it.
Yeah, verse 10.
I did.
The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they. But on the spoil laid they not their hand.
Now remember, Haman is a wealthy, wealthy man. Now I don't know where they rounded these 10 boys up at Haman's palace, because the Bible doesn't tell us. But anyway, the order was if the Jews wanted to, they could take a spoil of anyone they killed. They could take their possessions and keep them for theirs. They could do that. But we read here that they kill these 10 boys, but they don't touch any of Haman's possessions. They don't do that. Verse 11.
On that day, the number of those who were killed in Shushan in the citadel was brought to the king.
Okay, so at the end of the day, the day's over with, they go back and report to the king, because he wants to know how many people died today. Now we read back up there in verse 6 that 500 men died in the palace city, Shushan. Now then, we'll read later on, it's a ways on into our stuff, how many people were killed that day. But anyway, verse 12.
And the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan, the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now, what is thy petition, and it shall be granted thee, or what is thy request farther, and it shall be done.
So the king and the queen are talking over dinner, and he says, now the Jews have killed 500 men in Shushan. What have they done in the rest of my provinces? And he says, oh, by the way, what's your request, queen? What do you want done next? What's your next request? Remember, he said you kill 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. So I gather that's 510. I don't know. Because it says 500 men and the 10 sons of Haman. So anyway, verse 13, Esther begins to make a request.
Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow, also according to this day's decree,
somehow or other Esther knows, that there's been a great group of men escaped from these Jews this day. Now she knows it's a one-day decree. It's a one-day decree. And she has two requests, remember? See, she has two requests. It be granted the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow what they done today.
It's interesting, she didn't request all the provinces, just Shushan.
Yeah, just you. And I got to believe that in the rest of the provinces, the job was pretty well done. But anyway, in the city, there's been men got away. They hid, they got away, I don't know what. The Bible doesn't tell us. But anyway, they escaped the first day's fighting. And then she said, now remember, these boys are already dead. Everybody remember, these boys are already dead. They've been slain. And Esther says, I would like to have them hung on the gallows, like their dad. Their corpses. I would like to have their corpses hung on the gallows like their dads. She's got a little bit of a get-even streak in her.
Wow.
She's got just a little bit of one in her. The boys are already dead, but she wants everybody
to show everybody else.
Yeah, yes.
They could be seen that way too.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
see.
Uh-huh. But now the king grants part of her request, but not all of it. He grants part of it, but not all. Okay, verse 14.
And the king commanded it so to be done, and the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons.
Now then, I base what I'm going to tell you on a Bible history book I have at home that I can go sometimes follow up on Bible history. Now, King Ahasuerus orders the boys hung, but not on gallows. They would have been impaled. Like the two guys that tried to get the king killed
Right?
back there.
I wonder why they think that.
I don't know. But anyway, that's when you read the Bible history, and it's recorded from Persian history, that the king ordered these boys impaled. And does everybody know what it means for to impale someone? Huh? No. No. They're dead already. You sharpen a pole, razor sharp on one end, and you shove people down on it.
Stop.
Yeah. Now, the two guys that were plotting to kill the king, they would have been done that way alive. They would have been done that way alive. And that was a popular way back in this time and in history of them executing people, because you wanted to send a message to the rest. But anyway, for whatever reason, the king didn't hang these boys' corpses on the gallows. He just impaled them on stakes. I'm sure in a prominent place there in the palace city where everyone could see them. And typically, their bodies would remain there till they rotted off. Wild animals ate them or something. Is what would have happened. Now remember that this decree was only given at Shushan, the palace city. Now, on out in the provinces, there's a great party taking place, a celebration out in the provinces. But this is still going on in Shushan. The next verse, Ms. Linda.
For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand.
Now that, there's 300 of them that hid out.
Uh-huh.
300 of them had hid out the day before and thought, we're home free. This is a one-day decree. If we can hide out and avoid this one, they can't kill us tomorrow. But Esther got permission from the king to kill them the next day. And so they found 300 more of them and killed them. Now here's what's significant about this. You read this. But it says, but on the prey, they laid not a hand. They didn't harm a single Jew of those 2 days. Not a single Jew. But if you go back over to chapter 3 and verse 13, this was part of Haman's order that he requested. Chapter 3, verse 13. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. See, that was the original order that was given.
Yeah, he's going to slaughter them.
Every one of them, men, women, and children, as a prey, because they were going to be defenseless. They were totally, completely defenseless. And see, you fast forward over where we're reading at today. It says at the end of verse 16, but they laid not their hands on the prey. And the prey being the Jews in this particular case. Next verse, verse 17.
Okay, I can find it. On the 13th day of the month, is that right? No. I'm on 16?
17, you got it.
Okay, on the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same blessed day, and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is a celebration broken out in the empire, and they've prepared great meals, and everybody's just jubilant beyond measure. Verse 18.
But the Jews that were at Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same, they rested and made it a day of feasting and gladness.
Mm-hmm. See, now, the feast had broken out on the 14th day in all the empire, but because of the fighting that took place on the 13th and 14th, it didn't break out in the palace city until the 15th is when it broke out there. Verse 19. Conogram.
Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, it says out in the unwalled cities, unwalled portion of the province. This was the people that just lived out. It says they celebrated on the 14th. And it says they celebrated to the point that they treated it like we would treat Christmas. They exchanged gifts. They gave gifts to one another. They were so happy and so jubilant. Now Mordecai is going to try to bring something and to consolidate it into one celebration is what he's going to try to do. Verse 20. Teresa, I think it's back to you.
Oh, I'm
No,
sorry.
Brad.
Okay.
Verse 20.
And Mordecai wrote these things and sent letters of his law to the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahab, both nigh and far.
Now, like I say, Mordecai is taking charge. This event is over with. We're ready to move on. So he's taking charge. Verse 21.
To establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same yearly.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're going to have a 2-day celebration. This is a new feast instituted. They had all their other feasts that was instituted back under Moses, and this is a new feast that's added because of this celebration here. Verse 22.
As the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, in the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and the morning into a good day, and they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another and gifts to the poor.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They were supposed to exchange gifts, everybody get together where you could, and have a big celebration. And they really had something to celebrate. Because they were supposed to be completely wiped off the earth. Because all the Jews were in the Persian Empire. There wasn't none of them out. They were all within the Persian Empire. So the Haman intended to eliminate them from the face of the earth. And so it says in one day, it turned from a really bad day to a really good day for them. And so Mordecai says we must never forget, and what he's really saying is, without saying it here, we must never forget what God has done for us during this time. And God's never mentioned, but that's what Mordecai is telling all the Jews that you must do. And they give this, I think we'll read here, they'll give this feast a name. Verse 23.
So the Jews accepted the custom which they had begun, as Mordecai had written to them.
Yeah. So they all begin to do what Mordecai asked them to do, Miss White.
Because Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them.
Now, Mordecai was reminding them, this is what had happened. Now, remember, we could go back and read it. We won't, but anyway, you can do that if you want to. For that's how Haman decided the day he would destroy all the Jews on, was because he cast pur, or cast lots, to decide the day that he was going to destroy them all on. And Mordecai says, now you need to remember this. You need to remember who did it to you, and you need to remember what was planned. The next verse, let's see. Verse 25, I guess.
But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters, and that his wicked device which he devised against the Jews should return on his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the ground.
Yeah. So, the next verse then.
Wherefore they call these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore all the words of this letter and of that which they had seen concerning this matter, and which had come unto them.
Now, they first named this feast the Feast of Purim. Now, then you'll read, as you study Jewish history, you'll read sometimes where it's called the Feast of Lots. It'll be, some places it'll be called the Feast of Purim, and in other places it'll be called the Feast of Lots, because they cast lots. And that's what pur meant, was to cast lots. And so that's how they came up with the name of this feast. Next verse there.
27, the Jews ordained and took upon them and upon their seed and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fall that they should keep these 2 days according to the writing and according to the appointed time every year. I'm having a bit of trouble reading.
Oh,
He had his eyes dilated.
Oh, that'll do it.
but he drove.
Yes.
But anyway, it says, that they were to do this, and that they were to do this at this specific day every year as a reminder, and they were to teach generation after generation after generation after generation after generation what had happened, and they should be thankful for that. That's what the idea of it is. Brother Bill, 28.
And that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city. That these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed.
Should never go away. And I am told, I don't know, I am told Orthodox Jews today still celebrate the Feast of Purim.
They do.
They still do that yet today. And we're talking about something that happened almost 2,500 years ago.
Wasn't it 700 years before Christ?
No,
95
495?
or 65.
Well, this thing started about 474 is when this order went out to kill them. Somewhere around 474 BC. So we're looking at, we're 2023, you got 23 to 70 something, and you get 2,500.
Yeah, 470.
Yeah.
Esther became queen in 479 BC.
I've got, they call her queen earlier than that, but I don't know. Huh?
Okay, it says Mordecai held the office of first minister no longer than 8 years.
Right.
History records that another man was in that office in 465 BC.
Yeah.
So somebody was in there even before.
Now, Esther became queen and when?
Mine says 479.
That'd be right. Because she was queen somewhere between 4 and 5 years when all this started. I have to remind myself that we're counting down instead of counting up. Yeah, we're counting down instead of counting up.
It's backwards, ain't it?
What?
We're counting to it instead of away from it.
Yeah.
Kind of hard that way.
Yeah, I have to remind myself of that, but it's been some 2,500 years ago that this event took place. And the Orthodox Jews are still celebrating that today. Yeah. Verse 29. Connie.
Then Esther, the queen, the daughter of Abihail and Mordecai, the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm the second letter of Purim.
Now, this is interesting. This is the first time you're reading this about this. Now, Mordecai has the king's ring. So he can sign anything he wants to, press the king's ring down in it, and it's official. But this is the first time here where I read Esther signed it.
And she wrote it with all authority.
Yeah, yeah. So she helped Mordecai pen this. And that's the first time we read her. Now, we see all throughout this where she exercised great courage. I mean, tremendous courage. Put her own life on the line. But here we read where she signed it.
You know, he might not been well educated,
Who?
Mordecai.
I don't know. I don't know.
That might be why she helped him, though.
She might have done it because of that. And now,
He was a smart man. That don't mean
exactly, he's a very smart man. Well, as being a Jewish boy,
yeah.
he's smart. He has a fantastic memory.
And he has to know the first 5 books of the Bible.
From memory, that doesn't mean he can read them.
That's true too. That's true too. Never thought about that, but you know, you tell somebody enough,
Yeah, but because boys would have worked with another man in the family in the daily toil that they had, and all during the day, Dad would have repeated a verse and son would have repeated it back to him. Dad repeated the verse, son would have repeated it back to him. Until when a boy was 11 or 12 years old, a Jewish boy, he could recite from memory the first 5 books of the Bible.
when Missy was a baby, you know, we had these old books, Dick and Jane and all them. Missy would have me read them to her, but what was she, 2 years old? People thought she could read because she knew every word of the book. Because I've said them so many times.
Yeah.
And she'd get that book out and she'd just act like she was reading it.
And turn pages, wouldn't she?
just like she's reading it.
Turn pages, yeah, yeah.
It would,
Our youngest daughter, Carol, Lisa started taking music lessons first. Well, our youngest daughter, Carol, got to doing that just from watching Lisa. Which ain't good. She needed to learn the basics, you know. So Barbara and the music teacher figured this out, and Barbara told the music teacher, we've got to get Carol a different book. And so they got Carol a different book, so she couldn't memorize. She had to work at it to do it. But yes, that could have very well been that Mordecai could have quoted you anything from the first 5 books of the Bible, but might not have had the best reading skills. Yes. Verse 30. Let's see, has everybody been around? Brad, we're back to you.
And he sent the letters upon the Jews to the 120 and 7 provinces of the kingdom in ever had with word of peace and truth.
Isn't that a beautiful statement there? With peace and truth. It's time to quit fighting. The enemy's been destroyed. And now let's start functioning as an honest, truthful society.
and you know, they didn't kill all the Medes or the Persians. They just killed the ones that wanted to kill them.
Exactly right.
Can I make a comment on that
Yes.
I've noticed on this? Like on the 3rd chapter where it mentions how Haman was going to kill the men, the women, and the children. Yet when the Jews turned it around, it mentions only the men. And it also mentions that they did not touch the spoils. To me, that's telling me that they not only preserved the women and children of the Persians, but allowed them a way of living because they did not touch the spoils.
Yes.
To me, that's a grace of God that he was being charitable
Yes.
to the Persians.
It is, because, and then, good point, Bill, that's where this 30th verse comes back in, because remember, they send out more communication to the provinces, and it says it went out with words of peace and truth. Because there was no need for the Jews to make peace amongst themselves, but there was with the remaining Persians. There was.
I wonder what happened to all the people that was in authority that Haman had put there. You know, they probably lost all their power, and if they tried to do anything to the Jews, of course they was killed.
They lost their lives.
But out of the 127 providences that came to the palace for the big feast, a lot of them they probably had a change of heart.
Well,
Because they all came in, you know, to have a big feast.
I know how can I phrase this? But there was a lot of those guys out in those provinces I'm going to say follow the leader.
Well, it's always that way.
It wouldn't make them no difference if Mordecai's in charge or Haman's in charge or George or John's in charge. They're going to pledge their loyalty to them. So I get to keep my position.
Well, it's just like our country. We got two parties, and some of them won't agree with what the party's doing, but they're going to stand behind it.
True. That's true. Let's read that last two verses, and then we've got to get it wrapped up.
To confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed according as Mordecai the Jew, and as they had decreed for themselves for their seat the matters of the feastings and of pride.
Read that last verse.
And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book.
See, we're down now to Esther's in charge.
Yeah.
She's in charge. And it says it, so the book they're talking about it being written in, the Chronicles of the King. Now then, of course, we read earlier in this, the king had scribes, and their sole duty was to be historians, biographers. They were to record every day what the king did. And whatever decrees the king sent out, or whatever orders he sent out, or whatever, they were to record that. And so in this particular case here, we have to believe that King Ahasuerus has pretty well turned things over to Esther and Mordecai to run.
He wants to be a happy king.
Huh?
He wants to be a happy king.
At this point in time, but anyway, we'll wrap it up there for this evening, and we'll try to do a final wrap up next Wednesday night. There's some fun stuff in the 10th chapter.
Darn it. I hate it. We're going to be done.
Well,
Just our studies are so good.
Yes.
just in time for Esther.
True.
Yeah, we
For
should.
such a
I was
time.
worried about whether we get it wrapped up in time for you to go to
Yeah.
the Esther play or not, but we should wrap it up. It ought to be fresh in everybody's memory. And then if they try to sneak something into the play that ain't
That's not
Yeah, we
biblical,
got, hold up.
you'll say, wait a minute,
Yeah.
What are you doing?
wait a minute, that ain't there. But anyway, I want to thank you all for being here tonight and being so attentive. That is awesome that you all are so attentive. We study together and we have fun studying. We do.
Yes.
And learn a lot.
We hope we all, I know I do.
Oh,
I learn a lot.
I didn't.
I learned a lot from it. I could go back down and go right through it again and I would learn things.
More.
You know, one thing I have learned about reading the Bible, if I was a king, son of a king, and something happened to that king, I'd be out of their territory. Because they come after them king's sons. They do away with them. So my dad was a king and he got killed or took care of. I'd say, so long, folks. I'm going to the next few countries over.
If someone else took over, that's what happened.
That's what happened. They killed the sons.
You better go overseas.
Well, they wasn't overseas back then, but they did. They killed the sons just like Haman's sons.
They attempted to completely eliminate that bloodline.
It's just like Gideon's kids killed 69 of them or 70 of them. I mean, it's awful what they did to them kids.
It was.
Because they didn't want them to try to be king.
But there was literally a war amongst David's sons.
Yep.
Because they wanted, each one of them wanted to be the next king.
Absalom thought he was going to be. He chased David to kill his own dad.
Yes. Yeah, and even down through history, you get to read in the history of the British Empire about how family killed family.
Like the War of Roses.
Huh?
Like the War of Roses in Great Britain.
In England, they did a lot of inbreeding because they wanted to keep that royal blood in the family.
Yeah, keep it pure. They wanted to keep the blood.
And that was awful because they had them dungeons full of people that had things wrong with them.
Not anymore, Will, you change that.
The Egyptians did the same
But
thing.
anyway,
Did they?
prayer needs you want to share before we leave tonight.
Just keep my daughter and my grandson in prayer as they travel to Tokyo tomorrow.
Okay?
I'm just kind of scared as they go overseas somewhere where they never been.
Who's going?
Tokyo, Heather and Isaac.
They are?
Uh-huh. Yeah, Isaac is, he's been wanting to learn about Tokyo. He's really interested about Japan and stuff like that, so Heather said, okay, so.
Tokyo, I'm sorry, doesn't Tokyo rank like the second or third largest city in the world?
It is the largest city in the world, it's the number one. It's also the safest city in the world.
I'll say something about Tokyo.
It is the safest, even though it's the biggest city in the world.
In the Bible, it says in the last days, out of the sea will rise this, whatever it is that's going to come up out of the sea. And it's not out of the ocean, it's out of the sea of humanity. It's out of the sea of humanity.
Yes.
Now then, when you step out in the street in Tokyo, I've been there. When you step out in the street, there is so many people in the street and they're moving, and it literally just looks like waves on the ocean. I never seen anything like it. And when I stepped out there the first time and saw that, I said, wow, there's what they were talking about in Revelation. When I seen all those people walking.
Yeah.
It just constant all day long, just looked like waves on the ocean.
Heather said their buses closes and open so fast, their train system. So she's like, I hope I don't lose Isaac. I'm like, you better not. She goes, I put the GPS.
You know, we went to Canada and
Because they just
I never drove in Canada, but the caution light is not like ours. Ours has like 10 seconds between it or something, or 20. Well, the first caution light I got to, it turned yellow. When I pulled up to it, I shot through that thing and beep, beep, beep. And I realized their caution light don't stay on, but it's just a warning and it goes off. And if you ain't already under, you ain't supposed to go. And so that was the last time I did that trick.
I'm surprised you still ride with him.
After today.
But our group that went to Japan, we had State Department status. And so we went every morning to the embassy and were briefed on the day's activities that we'd be involved in. And I asked I guess he was our babysitter, I'm gonna say. He was assigned to look after us, and then we had an interpreter with us all the time too. But I asked the one that was kind of in charge of us, I said, how many people live in this city anyway? He said, I don't know. But he said, 30 million work here. Yeah, he says 30 million work here. But we would be out, they would keep us busy all day. We wouldn't get in till midnight or later every day. But you would see little silver-haired Japanese ladies out by themselves at that time of the day. I mean, just everywhere you would see them. And I asked our guy, I said, I don't see any policemen anywhere. I said, I'll bet there's some here. I just don't see them. Are they in plain clothes or what? But I said, are those little ladies safe? He said, oh, yes. He said, no one would bother them. He said, they are the most respected members of our society. He said, so they can go freely anytime, day or night, any place they want to go, and no one will bother them. I thought, my. If that could be said for us here.
Right.
Because first thing they do here, if they saw one of them out, is
Knock them in the head.
knock them in the head. That's right. Yeah. But,
They rob them.
Yeah.
yeah. But
If they had
anyway,
$3.
other prayer needs anyone's got.
Just remember Cammy.
Okay, will do.
Surgery went well.
Brad,
That's-
is Melissa okay tonight?
He's sleeping.
Oh, okay.
He's tired.
I bet he's
He's tired.
Oh, very well.
Yeah.
Hey, Brad, did you hear what Linda said?
Is
Is
Melissa
Melissa okay
okay
tonight?
tonight?
Yeah, she did watching
She has Cammy, and he said she had a bad cold.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I bet it's allergies. I don't know.
Carrie's at Morrison,
So
right?
she's,
If,
So is.
all right,
If
Ellie.
Oh,
if there's nothing else, something else I want you to think about is June, I think it's the 14th. Let me get my handy dandy calendar here. June the 14th. How would you feel about doing a cookout over at my house?
We'd love it.
we love it.
We ain't done that in forever.
I can do it any day.
Yeah.
I'm on
Darn, I'm
vacation.
gonna miss it.
Oh,
I'll be
We'll
gone.
do,
We'll
we'll
send
do
you a
another one.
picture.
We'll do another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, send me a
We'll all bring
picture.
covered dishes.
What are we gonna have? Yeah.
Just put a picture on Facebook and I'll comment from Italy. I'll be like,
Send her one email.
Facebook.
Just come on one day, can't you?
Yeah.
We'll all just bring covered dishes.
Yeah.
Please,
that what you
I'll
want?
furnish the hamburgers and hot
Okay.
dogs. I'll furnish the hamburgers and hot dogs.
Okay.
Okay.
But, yeah, we haven't done that in a long time.
That sounds like
I've
fun.
been missing that, so,
Okay.
so we'll be through with this study and be thinking about another study and planning on one.
When is our
Camp cleanup?
camp meeting?
See, this, I want to do this on a Wednesday night, so this ain't,
Oh, this is
this ain't
Wednesday.
a
Yeah,
camp.
this
So it will be one night off, I think. I think ours is the next night then.
Yeah, that
That's
would be
good meeting.
our camp team meeting would be the 15th.
Okay.
Yeah, so it'd be the 15th.
And then we, like the 23rd or something, we have camp cleanup.
I think 23rd, 24th, something like
24th.
that.
24th?
I think.
24th.
24th is Saturday.
We have a kitchen, so.
Yeah, but anyway,
That's
think
the
about
way
that a
we do
little bit, and if that's okay, we'll start
I've
announcing
seen
that,
you working there before.
it. I'll
we'll
be
plan on doing that.
Okay.
Also a reminder, the Mother's
It's Sunday.
celebration, whatever
It's
is
this
coming,
Brad,
It's
is
coming
Melissa
soon.
still doing that?
28.
The mother's teething Sunday. Okay, I didn't know with Candy and all that
we need to
going
keep
on.
announcing about, we need help in the
In our
thing
camp.
every Sunday.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
we're not getting the males to help.
We gotta have men to help because of
And the
those toys.
You know, there's 2 or 3 of us and we can't do it all.
No.
We're gonna have to
That's
have-
when your shoulders grow.
That's when you fall asleep in church. Brenda told me a story about something today I'll probably put in my sermon on Sunday, about being focused.
Yeah, that's a good.
Well, let's all stand. I've kept you way later than I should have. I'll try not to do that too often.
It was good, we did it was. I didn't hate to leave that little part.
Brother Billy, will you dismiss us, please?
Our dear Heavenly Father, you're so gracious, Lord. Lord, we just thank you for the many things you allow to happen in our lives. Lord, we just thank you that Cammie's surgery went well, and we just continue to pray for her. Lord, we just thank you for the fellowship we have. Lord, we just ask that you be with and all the people that are sick and people. And Lord, we ask that you have us witness, Lord, to the people that are lost. Lord, just be with our church. Lord, just thank you for your love. In Jesus' name.